Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reap the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delilah Lugo.
I am Jason Kwasnicki.
Hey, I don't want to toss this to Jason because he's gonna say it with so much disdain. Hey, Delilah,
No.
what game are we talking about
I'll be
today?
respectful.
Oh, well, Delilah, I want to know what game we're talking about today. What are we
Well,
talking about?
It's not a game.
What?
Yeah.
What are we doing another movie or TV show podcast on
Yeah.
Reap the Spoils?
Yep. Video game
What?
adaptation.
A video game adaptation. What could this be? Do it do adaptations do they ever change?
Yes.
Oh, they do change? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought they
Yeah.
never changed.
No, they changed.
Just like war, because war never changes. What are we talking about?
Fallout. The
Fallout!
Amazon Prime Video series.
Yeah, we're talking about this is an interesting adaptation because it's not a direct adaptation. It's a Fallout show that takes place in the Fallout world, but it's not adapting a Fallout game. So,
But it is canonical, apparently.
yeah, it is canonical. So, yeah, we're talking about Fallout, available on Amazon Prime Video. So if you haven't watched Fallout on Amazon Prime Video, I suggest that you pause this episode because Reap the Spoils, as returning listeners might know, is a semi-monthly, typically video game spoiler cast. This time we're talking about a video game television adaptation. So, we are going to spoil the show Fallout on Amazon Prime Video. So if you haven't watched it, pause the episode, go watch the show, then come back and listen to us spoil the whole thing. We're going to talk about it.
Can I, on the point of spoilers, can I interject with a quick? There may or may not be minor to major spoilers for pretty much every Fallout game in the series.
Sure.
Once we get to lore, maybe because lore is gonna, I see in your outline, comes later in the discussion. We might want to reiterate that in case people don't want to potentially run into major spoilers for a Fallout game they're not familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to, we're gonna get into this. When it comes to spoilers for Fallout games, I feel like there's not much to spoil because maybe with the exception of the first two Fallouts, I don't know. I don't think there's much of a surprise or any gravitas to Fallout's like 3, 4, maybe New Vegas
I
know.
just want to put it out there.
No, that's fine.
Because,
that's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
because if you want to talk about lore regarding this, you kind of have to talk about spoilers.
No, that's fair. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, potentially light to major spoilers. The range is out there. We might spoil everything about Fallout ever. So if you really want to go play every Fallout game, good luck. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 76, I guess, tactics as well to go play, and New Vegas. Like can't forget the Bethesda's crown jewel that they didn't even develop. So if you really want to go play all those before you listen to this, go for it.
Yeah.
I haven't even played all those games.
No, I haven't either.
I have. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna be the resident Fallout head.
Maybe
here.
that's why you're the most opinionated. Well, you're always the most opinionated. I can't even put this one on you for that.
Yeah, keep in mind, Delilah and Mark are the trophy hunters here, and Fallout 4, as much as I despise it, is I think the only game I've ever platinumed. So.
I still can't believe you did that to yourself, because I know what it takes to platinum that game. And
I was reviewing the game for the site at the time, so
that's true. You were.
Wow.
You were.
You built your base, didn't you?
Yep.
You asked that guy for so many endless quests. What was that guy's name? He'd always show up to your camp.
Preston Garvey?
Yeah, that's his name.
Minutemen, yeah.
Yeah.
The most memed, yeah.
Yeah, that guy.
Another settlement has called for our help.
Mark, I actually didn't know the show was canon, and if it is, until right now. So, wow.
Yeah.
If it is, that
Todd Howard said that it is canon.
Mm-hmm. And
he also claimed that he went through it to look for inconsistencies, which obviously he did not.
I mean, Go ahead, Delilah.
I was gonna say if it's canon, there's inconsistencies. If
Well,
Even Delilah knows.
all right, let give final spoiler warning. Oh, let me just give the quick info block. Quick info block for Fallout. It stars Ella Purnell, Aaron Moten, Walton Goggins, Kyle MacLachlan, my boy, and Moises Arias. It was executive produced by Todd Howard and Jonathan Nolan, Sir Christopher Nolan's brother. And this show was announced in 2020 after a long kind of, I guess, pitching process where many studios
all the
and
way
people,
back to the 90s. Yeah,
not even the 90s. I mean, well, maybe people were approaching Black Island Interplay,
yeah, there were.
but
Yeah,
everything that I saw was just after Bethesda acquired the IP. People were approaching Todd about it, and he didn't really feel comfortable about most of what he was being approached about until the mid 2010s when Christopher Nolan had an idea coming off of the creation of Westworld, and seemingly that was the fit Todd Howard needed to give this the green light. But anyway, I digress. It was announced in 2020. It was released in full. The full season was released on April 10th, 2024, and just over a week later, on April 18th, it was renewed for a second season. We're getting a second season, guys.
yes.
And there are so many loose threads that they need to tie back. They really left us on many cliffhangers with this show.
For the listeners who feel some kind of way about Mark not asking me or Jason if we were ready for a history lesson, you're not alone.
What? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm poking fun because usually you
Man.
ask us if we're ready, and you just drop. You were like, "You're getting this history lesson unsolicited, whether you want it or not."
You're right. I should have made sure you guys were prepared first. I'm so sorry. I will take that. I will take that back for next time. I'll make sure to approach that.
Yes, we would also
way.
like it if you did it with like some sort of South Park voice, like, "Y'all ready for a history lesson? Okay."
I was gonna say I guess I failed my speech check there.
Definitely low charisma build.
Yeah,
What are you doing?
my charisma is not. I put all my points into I can't even say endurance because I'm so tired right now. All right, are we ready? The final spoiler warning for the Fallout TV show, and I guess maybe some of the games too. If you don't want us to spoil everything for you, if you just want to go watch it, pause the episode, go watch the show, then come back to us spoiling it and talking about it, do that now. Anyway, we're gonna get started. So, I kind of wanted to start off talking about a little bit about the theming that I kind of saw like a consistent theme across the three lead characters, Lucy, Maximus, and Cooper Howard, or the Ghoul as they kind of refer to him in I guess present day. And that was kind of this theme of like I kind of put it as like broken optimism or shattered expectations. And I kind of wanted to talk through that a little bit. And what I kind of mean by that is Lucy had this very optimistic view of the vaults in that they were going to repopulate the world, they were going to save the world, and when she goes up to the surface, that kind of gets recontextualized and she realizes, oh no, the world is a horrible place, and eventually finds out that her father is kind of a horrible person.
Mm-hmm.
And then the same goes for Maximus as it pertains to the Brotherhood of Steel. He joined the Brotherhood in hopes that they were going to be the world saviors, and kind of starts to find out that really they're uh what we know about the Brotherhood of Steel. They're kind of knowledge hoarders. They're kind of historical hoarders. They don't want to save the world. They just want to preserve what happened before and not share it with anyone. And
Except
then,
they also want to conquer the world. But
well, like, there's yeah,
we'll
sure,
get
but
into it all.
okay. And then the one that I found most interesting, and frankly my favorite character. I don't know how you guys felt about the Ghoul or Cooper Howard.
He's
But
easily the most interesting, but it's largely Walton Goggins
yeah,
fucking carrying the shit out of awful writing.
he his kind of shattered optimism moment happened before the bombs dropped, where he kind of comes to this realization of who his wife works for, and
Mm-hmm.
and what Vault-Tec is really all about, which kind of leads to this big reveal that I read was kind of implied in the games.
No.
And
We'll get.
okay.
We can.
Well, no, let's
I
talk.
can explain. I can
Let's talk about
explain
it
that
now.
now.
Let's talk about
Okay.
it now.
So this game has now, I guess, according to Todd Howard, canonically made it so that Vault-Tec had a secret council with all the major corporations, that they had this super secret capitalist megamind evil villain plan to make a bunch of money by destroying the world economy by starting the nuclear war themselves. So, long story short, this game, or I'm sorry, this show has made it canonical that the nuclear war was begun by Vault-Tec.
Well, let's rephrase that, because to be clear, it did not necessarily. It heavily implies that they had that on the cards, that they had that on the table, but there's nothing that actually explicitly says that they did indeed drop the bombs. Just that they very well could have, and they very well were planning to. But that's not necessary. We don't necessarily know that's what happened, and that could be a future reveal.
Could be either way. It's dumb. It's based on, so in Fallout 3, some of the bombs that have not exploded, or one of the bombs, I think it's just the one in Megaton, it has a symbol on it that vaguely looks like the Vault-Tec symbol, even though it's not, which began a fan theory on Reddit that there was a secret conspiracy that it was actually Vault-Tec that started the war. Now, for years, decades actually, uh, it was the understanding generally within the games that it was China that launched nukes first when they began losing the war to the Americans. It's
And
not really known.
that goes like back to Operation Anchorage and all that
Right,
stuff, right?
the
Yeah.
Battle of Anchorage, and
Yeah.
then America invades the Chinese homeland. This was sort of not really, but yes, confirmed by Tim Kaine, the creator of the series. They always kind of left it vague, so they didn't think it was that important.
Right.
However, the symbol that is actually on the nuke and the unexploded nuke and megaton is not the Vault-Tec symbol. It just vaguely looks like it. It's actually a Chinese symbol. Um, B, Vault-Tec and the plan as it is explained in the show is extraordinarily stupid, and I don't know what phrase goes above cutting off your nose to spite your face, or it requires that all of these super successful corporate masterminds be complete and utter idiots with no understanding of economics or capitalism. So not only is it stupid in and of itself, but yes, it contradicts decades of in-game lore and conversations.
Well, again, they just because they discussed it, and frankly, I'm more so viewing that reveal where um Cooper Howard's wife, whose name I can't quite
Is it
remember.
Janie or something like that?
Let
I
me
forgot.
I'm gonna check
I watched
myself.
this when it released, so I
Yeah,
had to watch.
and I you know I've been steadily watching it over again for a second time over the past few weeks. Um, man, what is her name? I'm trying to find it on
And
the
part of the
spot.
reason I'm so angry about this is because the guy with the mustache smoking sitting behind the Robco sign, that is Mr. House, a major character from New Vegas, an awesome character, um, who is, to try to avoid spoilers, in the state he is in because he was unable to predict exactly when the nukes would fall. But if he was part of this conspiracy, you would think he would know when the nukes were going to fall.
So
So
okay, so her name was Barb. So I'm more so playing that because here's the thing to keep in mind, right? And I harped on this I think a little bit with when we did our Last of Us episode. Um this show, while it is canonical to the games and isn't a straight adaptation, so it's kind of its original thing, it's like it's not necessarily explicitly made for the gamers, for the people that played all the other Fallout games and want that additional like nugget of lore, that additional story. It's not necessarily, they're not necessarily the target audience. So that kind of being like a big moment and reveal toward the end of the season, it had like some gravitas to it. It had like some drama to it. it's kind of I kind of took it as just meant to be like, this is a possibility, this is something we could do, we're going to imply that Vault-Tec is capable of this and is willing to do it. But again, there's no absolute definitive confirmation that they did. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the next season, which again has its own set of problems, if they confirm that once, presumably Cooper Howard finds his wife and daughter and finds out more information about what happened that day, that they didn't drop the bombs, that it was China after all, which again would kind of go against the importance of keeping that vague.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jason, you brought up Tim Kaine. He was the original writer on the first few Fallout
one,
games.
yes.
Yeah.
Only the first one. I don't
Only
think
the first
he was
one,
actually
okay.
involved in
With
two
two?
with Black Owl Studio.
Okay, so that's what I was referring to before. I read that he did intend to keep it somewhat vague, and kind of has said in interviews like more recently in the past decade or so that Vault-Tec very well could have dropped the bombs, but the implication or the intention was never to actually reveal that, was to keep the question open-ended as to whether or not they did. And frankly, I think the idea that they did is really grim and a really interesting thought experiment, kind of putting that out there as like a definitive fact. I do think would take away from that, but I don't think we got it as a definitive fact. I think they kind of did that for drama's sake and are still trying to keep it vague, but they probably can't keep that facade up for long.
It didn't
Oh, go ahead,
feel
Delilah.
it didn't feel very vague to me because it seemed like they created, I think, one of the vaults with cryogenic chambers to preserve like the masterminds of the world so that when things got, destroyed and then better on the surface, those people still existed. And so it seemed like this whole plan was orchestrated so that the masterminds can live and kind of take over the world and destroy it as it is. So I actually took it literally, like, no, this was Vault-Tec's orchestration. This was their plan.
It's entirely like I said, it's entirely possible. I'm simply saying that like we didn't necessarily get definitive confirmation. It was just very, very heavily implied that they did indeed drop the bombs. But I still feel that there's room for them to pull the rug out from underneath the audience and reveal that they didn't. I do want to talk about the 31, 32, 33 vault experiment. Because I do feel like that's probably one of the weakest parts of the overall writing of this story. Mostly because I don't really understand the 3 vault structure. I get like Vault 31 is literally it's just a cryogenic chamber for not even world masterminds, just for Vault-Tec
Middle
executives.
management.
Yeah, middle management.
The entire goal of this thing is to just breed in middle management, which, God, I'm trying to keep it to things that are germane to the conversation, but there's so many problems with the writing in this show.
It's
It
just
can
like,
easily boil into a 3-4 hour conversation.
I just feel like that's the most. Oh, hi, Cat. That's just like the most like lame reveal that like that's the experiment of this triple vault structure, is just that 31 is holding all the middle managers of Vault-Tec, and the goal is to just breed the ultimate middleman. It's just like, it's almost comical how lame it is.
And it also
And
retroactively makes a bunch of questions you had early on that I remember we were playing FF14. And at that point I had just finished watching the first episode, and I was like, I have a bunch of questions. I'm really confused. Things aren't lining up. But I was willing to like they were clearly setting up mysteries to be
well,
revealed.
the
But
conversation, as I recall it, was you mentioned to me like all the vaults are supposed to have experiments, and I was like, well,
yeah,
yeah, keep going. There is
yeah,
an experiment. It's not
it
a
was,
good one,
but
but
it
there
wasn't
is
just
one.
that. There are a lot of things in that first episode, and by the time you actually get the revelations, it actually makes retroactively the first half of or first 5-6 episodes not only make less sense, but it's just mind-bogglingly dumb. I don't know how else to put it. Like,
Well,
and we don't have time to
expound
go.
on Well, no. Expound on that because we gotta talk to make that kind of
Alright,
claim.
so
We gotta talk through some of it.
So, as you just said, the reveal is that the whole point of these 3 vaults is to, you have cryogenically frozen people from the past, who are being kept to be middle managers. They breed with new people, teach them how to be middle managers, and eventually all these super middle managers will come up from beneath the vaults and rule the wasteland. Okay. So the first point is that everybody in these vaults has to be fucking idiots for anything that's going on to work. Um, like it's not in the least bit suspicious that every fucking overseer that comes in is from Vault 31.
Well, they
And
eventually
there's
realize
even
that.
and everyone, all they ever say is, well, the mashed potatoes were better. And the only person in the vaults who isn't a fucking idiot is the fucking son of the overseer. I'll call him Bonzo. I don't know the actor's name, but he played Bonzo in Ender's Game.
The
On
actor's
top of
name would be Moises Arias. His name
Yeah.
in the show is Norm.
All right, so that's point one. Point two, Vault 32. Apparently, they found out the truth, and they went so mad with the truth that they killed themselves. And you see the one person with the fork in the toaster oven. So they all like tried to claw their way into Vault 31, and many of them ended up killing themselves because they found out the truth that they were being groomed to be the super middle managers who were going to take over the wasteland
Well,
and be in charge of everything.
so hold on, because I don't think that's what happened.
It literally
And
shows a person sitting with a fork in their hand in a toaster.
well, okay,
And
that's one. But hear me out, because I don't think that's what happened, right? Because when Norm and whatever the cousin's name was, his name, oh Chet, Lucy's cousin, when they went to explore Vault 32 and kind of find out what happened there, they come to the revelation that a Pip-Boy was used to access the vault, and that
which is
Pip-Boy
another question.
was Lucy's mom. And we find out what happens with her, and we'll get to that. But more so, the implication to me was that Moldaver and her, surface cult or whatever, went into Vault 32 and potentially killed everyone long ago, and we're using that as like a staging ground to then invade 33 to get at Hank. That's kind of how I took it. Now,
Hank, who knows who she is, yet lets her in. They have regular trade between the vaults, and yet nobody realizes that none of the people here who are walking in from Vault 32 are none of the people from Vault 32 that they knew the last time they traded. Not to mention that they all have Pip-Boys, so they all would have been able to detect the radiation on them. Not to mention that I'm going to call him Paul Atreides because Kyle MacLachlan is the real Paul Atreides. Kyle MacLachlan presumably knows, not even presumably, he has to know who she is. Not to mention that if she needed to get into Vault 33, why didn't she just go into Vault 33? Why'd she go into Vault 32? And if they did go into Vault 32, so they killed the people and then just let all the crops die and waited there until magically somebody reached out to form this marriage pact. Not to mention, you see how I can keep going on
wait
and
a sec.
on and
Well,
on with how
I guess
dumb all this is.
the one counterpoint that I'm thinking through is that we don't necessarily know that Hank knows who Moldaver is.
He has to, because he went to get his kids back from his ex-wife, who is dead, who apparently Moldaver cares about very dearly, even though everything she does suggests she doesn't.
But we don't necessarily know that they had interacted before in the past.
I mean, yeah, sure. Apparently, his wife turns into an ex-skeleton from what happened, and Moldaver is just fine and dandy.
Yeah, because the implication is that he's the one that dropped the nuke on Shady Sands, and thus turned his wife into a ghoul.
And Moldaver explicitly says that she knows Lucy, so like there are heavy implications that if
she clearly has a relationship or had a relationship of some sort with Lucy's mom, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Moldaver and Hank have interacted before or know much about each other at all, at least directly. Indirectly, sure, because they have that same connection, but not necessarily directly. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here with you a little bit, Jason, because I do think that there is some plausible deniability to some of these claims, but I do also see what you're saying about like just the general setup for that first episode and then how it all plays out with the reveals toward the end of the season, I get how it could be a little contradictory and
And
be a little nonsensical.
their master plan to sneak in, they just let anybody wander into Vault 32 to see what actually happened, because that's what happens during the actual like fight. Is Bonzo walks into Vault 32 and sees what happened to them. Their whole goal is to get Hank, and yet at no point during this fight is Hank secured. He could have easily died at any point. Speaking of which, why did she just let these? It's as we find out that she's apparently pretty important in what's left of the NCR. You would assume that these aren't just raiders; these are somewhat part of the NCR, so somewhat disciplined and under her command. Why does she just let them go hog wild? If she cares about Lucy's mother, why does she let some random guy marry her? And depending on your definition of sexual assault, because it's under false pretenses, essentially sexually assault this woman she cared for, his daughter. Why don't they just secure Hank before going crazy and fighting everybody? It's just
Also,
what the fuck is going on?
For the slightly less initiated, NCR is the New California Republic. Just I had to think about that for a second. Like, what's the NCR again?
Oh, we'll get to the NCR.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Jason's locked and loaded for this episode.
Like
Delilah,
I said,
please,
resident Fallout head. Yes, Delilah, give us
please
some of
talk.
your perspective.
Sorry, Jason's dropping a lot of points.
He's dropping a lot of bombs, you might
a
say.
lot of bombs. Yeah, there you go. And I guess the only one that I can really argue against somewhat is I do think you might be reading a little bit too much into the relationship between Moldaver, Hank, Lucy, and stuff like that.
I also agree with that. Yeah.
We don't know enough, and honestly, if her bigger goal is to catch Hank, and that's what's gonna help the world, her friend's daughter getting her jimmies rocked is probably not the worst thing in the grand scheme of things. But I think actually you make good points that I didn't even think about when I was watching the show. Straight up,
she doesn't just get her Jimmy rocked; she also gets stabbed
well,
fatally.
yeah, no,
and
yeah,
then
totally.
magically through plot armor gets out and is able to stim pack herself.
Okay, but to be fair, Jason, like you like get limbs crippled and fall out, and you could just pop a stim pack and you're fine. Like,
yes, it works in the game. It's when it's in, and it's not. So I want to make clear, it's not the fact that she uses the stim pack; it's that healing technology within just the show is very inconsistent with what it can do. Like stim packs can literally bring dogs back from the dead and heal fatal wounds, but at other points they're nowhere to be found.
In a way, I feel like that's more in line with how the game is. If anything, it feels more authentic that way. That this shit that like is seemingly nonsensical and makes no like real world logical sense. But it works in the video game, and this is an adaptation of the video game.
No, it works. So. It works as a game, but these are also different mediums. You need to maintain stakes.
Yeah, but I don't know, because I kind of see it both ways, right? I get what you're saying. It is a different medium, and you kind of have to have that. You kind of have to have that a slightly different viewpoint on how things like that are handled. If someone gets wounded, they're not just gonna like seriously wounded, like a limb is crippled or something. What was his name? Thaddeus's like foot and stuff. Getting crushed by the power armor.
When we know he has a stim pack in that giant bag he's lugging around, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the whole thing where the doctor gives him something that cures his foot like instantaneously, but kind of turns him into a ghoul as a result. I don't know. I feel like that's really. I personally feel like shit like that. It's really video gamey, and it kind of makes the show feel a little more fun. And it's kind of like those little things that I feel are where this show does kind of shine. Because I would also say that like kind of in line with Bethesda Fallout games. Because there's a pretty big distinction, and Jason, you could definitely attest to this. There's a big distinction between the writing in like Fallout 1 and 2 and New Vegas, which is largely comprised of staff from 1 and 2, and Bethesda Fallout games.
Yes.
Where the main plot kind of sucks, and all the side stuff and the personal stories and the exploration is the stuff that you're there for. And I kind of feel like that's the stuff that's better in this show versus this main plot, because this main plot in this show, I will say, kind of sucked.
Yeah,
It like the
it's nonsensical, yeah.
we'll also talk more about the cold fusion thing, but like the cold fusion is like a plot MacGuffin that comes and then it goes and then it suddenly comes back again. And we find out that all that Hank was needed for was because he knows the passcode to activate it, and it's just to power the town again or something.
Well, Los Angeles. That's the other thing is, we're not even going to delve into that. That's too in the weeds.
What the
The
fact that this is
geography.
also in Southern California, like 1 and 2
Yeah.
were.
So
Yeah.
just a brief, for people listening who might not know, Fallout, the Fallout fandom generally separates the Black Isle Studio / Obsidian Games. Obsidian Games was, which a lot of you probably are familiar with, was founded by a lot of former members of Black Isle that worked on Fallout. They all take place in somewhat different geographic, but it's all on the West Coast. So it's referred to as West Coast Fallout. And there is a continuum between the games and kind of the march of history, and the effects of each game on the history of the next. All of the Bethesda games take place on the East Coast. So it's always kind of been separated, West Coast, East Coast. Black Isle Studio / Obsidian and Bethesda. This show takes place on the West Coast, which creates problems because it's overseen by, obviously
The
the
East Coast
showrunners,
dude.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
who claim they are, but clearly haven't actually gone through the writing for discrepancies. Yeah.
I mean, it's partly what happens when you acquire an IP you didn't create, I guess.
Yeah, a good way to think of it is like, original trilogy Star Wars versus Disney trilogy Star Wars.
Can
Yeah.
I add to your list of discrepancies, because I really only have one?
Go
Because
for it, Delilah.
you listed
I'm here.
more than I even thought. Um,
I'm trying to hold myself back because I don't want this to get too long, because I could literally
yeah.
do this for every episode, but I want to keep to the big
for
important things.
for every episode of the show, of the Fallout show.
Yes,
I
yes,
thought you were
yes.
saying you could do this for every episode of our show, and I'm like, Jason, you basically do, buddy.
I know, I'm the resident asshole. I'm sorry, everybody.
But go ahead,
When
Delilah.
I think of the idea that the vaults were created to be different forms of human experimentation, and one of them had the cryogenic chambers where there were the masterminds frozen in there.
Super middle
Fallout
managers.
4, yes, right. Fallout 4 has this theme in the beginning of the game, so I'm not really spoiling anything of the, cryogenic stuff, and I don't remember there being anything related to that. So if it is
Okay.
canon, then
So this, I'm gonna. I don't know if you probably neither of you know this, but in the games, Vault Tech is actually, they're not really. It was not specifically their goal to do all those experiments in the vault. They're doing it on behalf of the Enclave, who are the remnants of essentially like the deep state of the government, the remnants of the original U.S. government.
mhm.
And Vault Tech just gets hired out, to make these vaults and do these experiments because the Enclave has crazy ideas about colonizing space, even regardless of what happens with the nuclear war. That's actually what the vaults originally were. They were designed as prototypes of potential to see if human beings could survive in them, because they're simultaneously designed to be put on other planet, like on the moon and other planets. And the experiments are meant to test human beings against certain conditions in space. It's very, very weird. That's why they're kind of
Yes,
just strict bad guys in the game, the Enclave.
test all the humans' capability of all being named Dave. It's a very
Yes.
challenging test.
Well, obviously it evolves, but like that was the original.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
Yeah.
making a fun.
So
Vault-Tec in this show kind of gets elevated a lot, and whereas originally it was just a competent company that got hired out by well, at the time the government, but then later on the Enclave, the remnants of the government.
Mm-hmm.
right, that's kind of where the discrepancy comes, or the one discrepancy that you didn't already state that I noticed is, if that's the case, right? And they're making it seem like in the show that Vault-Tec is the one that orchestrated all of this, and this is all them, and it's not for any kind of human preservation purposes. It's for some kind of like weird sick control. Their motivations wouldn't really make sense because it seems like the cons outweigh the pros in that situation when it comes to humanity's survival. And B, it's would not make sense that if it's canon in Fallout 4, there's cryogenic chambers, and there's cryogenic chambers in the show, and those chambers were intended to preserve the middlemen, whatever you call them, and for later, for them to come out later and take over the world. Whereas in the game, it was just a bunch of people preserved to survive in this destroyed apocalyptic world, which in my head makes more sense from Fallout 4 perspective, but then
not all
that
the
would just
vaults
be
are
a
designed to be
clashing.
experiments. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be like a clashing idea if it's canon. So
Also
that's it.
clashing is, like I mentioned, that Mr. House is the guy in charge of Robco, sorry, in the room, and he's the one smoking, and he says, "It's a big profit to be made at the end of the world." Mr. House is trying to literally fucking revive humanity in New Vegas. So, like, what is it?
Yeah.
Not only can you not predict something that you are conspiring to commit, but you now apparently are an idiot who thinks you can profit from the end of the world.
Right.
Just to circle back to the 31, 32, 33 experiment, because like we talked about mostly how the beginning and the end kind of don't really make much sense, to Jason's point, but mostly I want to talk about just like what was the purpose of 3 vaults, you know? 31 is to cryogenically store the middle managers, and we only really see 33 as kind of this a practically like utopian civilization. You know, they have their own like small government where they have kind of an executive and a legislative branch almost. Um, so we don't really get to see what 32 was like, but I don't really understand the logic of the 3 connected vaults in terms of how they relate to breeding the ultimate middle manager. Is it just to
I'll be fair to the show. They do have a throwaway line that there are good genes. So you could extrapolate, like in the population, which obviously is not borne out physically by what's represented on the show. You somehow in a ration society have like an overweight dude. Like I don't know how that happened, but like, but I
well,
think the implication
that
is
could
that.
just be genetic, Jason. Let's be fair.
They just said good
people could.
gene. Like I don't know. I don't know. But like the point is that I think the implication was that they're using these 2 vaults to manipulate breeding, I guess, somehow.
Do I have to pull out my my inner liquid snake? You have the recessive genes, brother.
I don't know, man. I'm trying to be fair and give it its due.
What I did kind of find this a little endearing at the beginning of the show, where you're talking about genetics and population and whatnot. I did find it really funny. I feel like a lot of the humor in the show was mostly good. It gets a little awkward and uncomfortable at times, but in the first episode, the kind of implications where they were talking about, because being a small vault in a small community, eventually you're going to hit a point where
You gotta fuck your cousin?
yeah,
Well,
you
yeah,
gotta fuck your cousin.
I think that's the other implication of having multiple vaults, is to avoid that. Yeah.
Yeah, which like I feel like the humor early on in the show was pretty funny in that regard. I found that a little endearing that they just openly were talking about that. It's just like part of that community, I guess, that it's this implied thing that they just do. Um, where I felt it got really awkward was when we start involving Maximus, who we haven't really talked much about yet. And just kind of his very naive. I mean, I guess it's part of growing up with the Brotherhood of Steel, but
Who are explicitly in the early scenes jerking off in front of the rest of the barracks. Yeah.
No, they're not jerking off. They're making their cocks explode.
Yeah.
Right.
Grows all prickly.
But yeah, I guess let's talk, I guess, a bit about the Brotherhood and about Maximus as a character, because we haven't really gotten into that much, or him at all. How did you guys like him as a character at all? I thought the romance between him and Lucy was very forced and not very earned, but what did
I
you
want to
guys
let
think?
Delilah start.
Go, oh boy, because Jason's gonna take up the next 10 minutes.
Well, I'm trying again. I'm trying to make it a conversation. Yeah.
I know. I'm messing with you.
I didn't find their relationship to be romance. I found it to just be like two young, pretty good looking people trying to have sex because they could and they have needs. Um, I didn't sense any romance, and if that's what they were trying to demonstrate, then yeah, there was really no believable chemistry. I
They
felt like it was just lust, maybe.
they she says like that whole thing about like since I've been up here, it's just been like terrible people, but you're like the nicest person I've ever met, or something along those lines. Like they very clearly try to contrive this like relationship between the two of them, and the one area where I felt it worked was just the implicit trust that that he kind of gained from her, where when he eventually does tell her the truth that he's not Knight Titus, he's just Squire Maximus, who
Yeah.
is not this prominent knight in the Brotherhood. Um, he had already earned her trust that she just kind of accepted it and was fine with it. And accepted that he, owned up to it eventually and everything. Like that aspect of the relationship, I think worked. It was the rest of it that didn't.
Yeah. Um, I guess just to speak on Maximus real quick, I didn't care for him as much as I did Lucy and Cooper, but I did like that finally in a Fallout IP or product that there was finally a Brotherhood of Steel who wasn't like hardcore Brotherhood of Steel. Like it's very rare to see a Brotherhood of Steel side character NPC for gaming terms to not be all about the Brotherhood and their code. And it seemed like he really at first I was like, "Oh, he should really be by the code because I don't know, he wanted to really be a what in the power armor, but then I realized, oh, he was a kid and he got rescued by them, and that really was the only reason. And after he saw how they treated the squires being a squire, he was like, oh, that's kind of shit. But in all the other Fallout games that I've played, at least it's I guess I like that they had someone who wasn't by the code and was kind of opposite to the code but pretended to be a Brotherhood of Steel, but it also kind of minimized that faction for the show, if that makes sense.
And that's why I bring up that like that I opened up or this conversation with the kind of theme, the through line between the three leads that I felt was really prevalent, right? He is a very different Brotherhood of Steel character, right? And it's almost refreshing to get something like that. Um and it just connects him better with Lucy and her situation and Cooper Howard and his situation. They just all have this thing in common, even though it's in a completely different context in a completely different way. Um, Jason, go ahead. I know you have stuff to say.
Well, of the three characters, he's by far and away the worst.
Well,
I heard
I
somebody.
don't disagree with that, but
Um, he is e- extraordinarily unlikable, plainly narcissistic, and manages to spend the entire season failing miserably upwards. Like the definition of fucks up and should rightfully be punished, yet is raised up. I heard somebody make a great analogy about it. He's basically like Finn from the Star Wars sequel trilogy, except you don't have John Boyega to make him somewhat likable, and so it's just a massive waste. In fact, it's the exact opposite. He's unlikable because he's extraordinarily selfish.
well, to
Uh,
be fair to Finn, he had a lot more against him. That was J.J. Abrams.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
But I'm just saying there's a good comparison to be made there. In terms of the Brotherhood writ large, like none of the Brotherhood in this depiction are the Brotherhood. In fact, they don't really explain it. They have a throwaway line that barely scratches the surface of what the Brotherhood is. Um, but the Brotherhood is really just iconography in this show. You really don't get into the ideology at all, and somehow nobody being recruited believes in the ideology. Nobody wearing the power armor or fighting. None of the knights or paladins believe in the ideology. The head scribe doesn't believe in the ideology. Now, it's important to note that the Brotherhood is not one singular organization in the Fallout lore. There are different chapters regionally, and they mention multiple times at the beginning of this show, or they say Commonwealth multiple times. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Commonwealth is the Boston, Massachusetts area that's you playing in Fallout 4, which opens geographic questions. Furthermore, later on in the series, the Pridwin comes into play. The Pridwin is stationed out of the Commonwealth. The showrunner tweeted that it wasn't the Pridwind, but it says Pridwind on the side and looks exactly like the Pridwind from from Fallout 4, which means that since this takes place later on, canonically, only a few of the Fallout 4 endings can happen. But anyway, the point is that the Brotherhood are supposed to be these guys, essentially isolationists who hoard the technology of the old world to themselves to protect the outside world. They're supposed to be in bunkers, and actually in the geographic region that this show takes place in, they've essentially been wiped out by the time New Vegas happens. The NCR has fought a war with them and completely wiped them out. There are like a couple dozen hiding in some bunkers. So my question is, why are they outside? They got like barracks. They just look like generic army men.
Well,
nobody in the Brotherhood seems to actually care about the Brotherhood, and they're all idiots. And every time that Maximus has clearly done something totally narcissistic, selfish, or wrong, he's somehow rewarded for it.
Okay. So I think the thing to keep in mind about what we mostly see of the Brotherhood as a whole in this show is that it's very clearly like a rookie camp, a new trainee camp, right? They're all young people that are not even squires, right? They're all just under training. They're still in school. They're still learning. You could even argue that they're not even quite Brotherhood yet, right? Which might help to explain why they don't really follow the ideology very well. They're very young, naive, and just there's kind of, you could have a plausible explanation for some of their stupidity. And in particular Maximus. Now, with Maximus's kind of narcissism, I guess, you kind of find out that he didn't do the thing that everyone thought he did at the beginning, right? He didn't put the whatever into Dane's boot so that he would get injured so that he could be a squire instead. Dane did that to himself. That's a reveal in like the final episode, I think.
But he also says to the head scribe, "I wanted it to happen. Is that wrong?" That is like a sociopathic question. What the fuck?
I don't know, because it's like,
and he's rewarded for it. He's made a knight.
Yeah,
or I'm sorry, a squire.
Well, he is made a knight because they all think that he's the one that killed Moldaver at the end.
Mm-hmm.
No, well, he is. Yeah, he's eventually made a knight just by being at the right place at the right time. Yeah,
right. Like that in that example, especially, it perfectly exemplifies your failing
egregious.
Upward.
Yeah, that's the least egregious of them because you were in the right place at the right time. But like the other ones, like the whole situation that's very contrived with Rappaport, Knight Titus. The way in which those events transpire, like he's able at the end to shoot the Yagwai once in the head and kill it. Meanwhile,
he got a really good percentage on his VAT score, dude. Come on.
Meanwhile, Knight Titus with power armor that we see in the show destroy buildings and crush heads is completely feckless against this Yagwai and somehow dies from just being in the armor suit. And at no point during this confrontation does Maximus just take one shot to kill it. And then Mike Rappaport is simultaneously, as he's dying, telling Maximus to give him the stim pack. He is simultaneously telling him that he will be held to trial and killed for what is happening. Which, why would you say that to somebody upon whom your life depends? Like, everybody in this fucking show has to be an idiot for this plot to work. I'm sorry.
He just failed his speech check, man. Like,
yes, I've heard these excuses online. Like, it's like the game because it's a speech.
I mean, Jason, would it have been better? Mediums. Would it have been better if there was a UI on the screen at all times, like showing the dialogue choices and having a cursor select? Like, I want to pick that one.
Maybe
failed dialogue.
Maybe the meta element would have ameliorated it. I don't know.
They need to release the UI cut of the Fallout TV show. Give us a Pip-Boy overlay. We can go through everyone's inventory.
I don't know, but at least we can all agree. I think that Maximus is the worst character.
Oh
Not
yeah, for sure.
not to mention his whole backstory is him surviving right next to a nuclear explosion in a refrigerator with a hole in the back of it,
Dude,
which I am old enough to remember
he
online
f-
debates of how Indiana Jones survived a nuclear explosion in a refrigerator.
he f-
Nerddom has had this argument before,
I
and
was
it was
literally about to say he
it
found
was
a DVD
decided.
copy of that movie.
Yes, it was decided that Indiana Jones could not survive a nuclear explosion in a refrigerator.
I think it was funny.
Okay, so going a little further toward the ending and stuff, because I do want to talk about a lot of these loose threads that the show kind of leaves us with. Um, in particular, Hank McClane obviously is the one who dropped the bomb on Shady Sands. After he escapes with the power armor, the kind of final thing that we see before credits roll is him going to New Vegas. Do you think like is that where he got the resources to drop that nuke on Shady Sands? What do you guys think he's going there for? Like, do you have any ideas at all? Jason, is Robert House like still at New Vegas at the conclusion of that game? I haven't played New
Depends.
Vegas to know. Okay.
It depends, and actually, I think this actually canonizes multiple. That's another problem with the show is because it takes place after most of the events in the game series. It canonizes a lot of optional endings,
It's not even that
um,
like that isn't
including even Fallout 4. The Pridwind has to survive, which means only 2 endings are possible in Fallout 4.
that's kind of
Um,
the thing about this show that maybe they should have considered was in trying to link this to other locations from the games, they are kind of canonizing certain endings, and that part of the nice thing about Fallout, every Fallout game taking place in a different location, is that they're so separated, they're so isolated from one another. There might be some connective threads, but nothing that definitively says
well,
this ending or this event actually did occur in that location.
not 1, 2 in New Vegas, which
Well,
New
okay.
Vegas is essentially Fallout 3. It was made from material that Black Owl Studio was working on for a third Fallout,
Hmm.
before, obviously it got sold off to Bethesda. Those are all connected, and the NCR is kind of the through line. The NCR is founded as a result of the Wanderer's actions in the first game. You see it 80 years later as a developing nation with a Congress and president in the second game, and obviously it's a superpower expanding into the Mojave Wasteland in New Vegas. Speaking of which, based on what you just said, Hank nuking Shady Sands, um, that totally negates that. New Vegas happens. What is it? 15 years before this
15 years
game.
before, yeah.
Yeah.
The show,
So
yeah.
the events of New Vegas completely contradictory. Shady Sands is there. You meet the president of the NCR. Everybody talks about Shady Sands. Um,
Well, I guess it
there's a whole
depends on how old Lucy is. It's not
and
like
apparently the NCR just somehow collapsed. Even if we just accept that Shady Sands was nuked, somehow an entire nation state with multiple member states, a Congress, fucking. This is something that a lot of people don't understand about Fallout. It's not a post-apocalyptic game. It's a post-apocalyptic game. Like the NCR, the New California Republic, is a fully fledged nation state with multiple member states, Congress, local governance, top governance. There's a central bank that issues their fiat currency. There is a giant industrial center in the Boney Sands. You get what I'm saying? Like
it's
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 not,
about it's about picking up the pieces where they were left off. It's not
but
about surviving necessarily.
yeah, but there's no way that even if you just nuke the capital, there's no way that collapses in 15 years into nothing. That's that's kind of the problem a lot of people
Well,
have.
no, because Shady Sands was nuked when Lucy was still like very young, right? It was you could almost say that happened 15 that could have happened 5 minutes after the ending of New Vegas. I think it still would have worked.
Hmm.
Possibly. I mean, I don't know the exact timeline of the show because
And I don't
again,
think they
there's the
really
chalk.
make an effort to explain it
Yeah,
either.
on the chalkboard they say downfall of Shady Sands is what 2277, and then
I don't
an arrow with
recall.
a nuclear cloud. Does that mean that it was nuked in 2277? If there was a downfall, what was the downfall precisely? We know that there was a currency issue with inflation, and they were moving into the Mojave to get, and that's what I mean by post apocalypse. Like that's what the phrase "war never changes" actually means. Is that the reasons for the wars are the same even after the apocalypse. The NCR in New Vegas is expanding into the Mojave for grazing land for their bustling agricultural sector. Like it's a full fledged nation, just like we are today. They have the same problems, inflation, like
And
it's
yes,
just,
you are correct. 2277 was the fall of Shady Sands.
yeah. So
I
like
just
the
wanted to
show,
confirm that.
in addition to like not explaining a bunch of things, like the Enclave apparently exists even though it was destroyed in two. They don't even explain what the Enclave is. They barely explain what the Brotherhood is. To me, it's like a bunch of iconography with none of the substance of the games.
While trying to
Yeah.
tie them all together.
Exactly, like by and making it canonical, yeah.
I mean, but hey, man, I saw some sugar bombs in the background, and
And Grognak the Barbarian is on television when
yeah,
somehow they all bear direct witness to a nuclear explosion and don't get fucking their skin seared.
oh, man, Jason's really getting deep in the weeds now.
Yeah, no, I just I don't even know what to say.
He's like, the lore, damn it, the lore.
Because I mean,
And
you
we
know,
haven't even gotten really to Cooper yet, but he decides it's a smart idea. As everybody's getting into his shelter, he's just going to ride off on a horse with his daughter in the direction of nuclear explosions.
Well, okay, but that goes into some of the loose threads about that were left at the end of this season. So I
Fair
mean,
enough.
we
I
have
think I
no
know. Yeah, I
if we
think I
have
know
no
where you're
more to
going with
say
that.
about if we have no more to say about Hank going to New Vegas, then I want to talk about Cooper Howard and
Well,
where.
I will say one thing is that, and as I mentioned earlier multiple times, Mr. House is present there. Maybe Mr. House is in the second season going to be revealed to be furthermore part of this conspiracy, which would contradict what he is in the game, but whatever.
Well, I guess it remains to be seen how like how he functions in New Vegas, the game, versus how he functions in New Vegas, this show.
Right.
And he has this pre-existing relationship with Hank, obviously, because they were in the room together in the past. That we saw that. So, or at least they were in with the company at the time. Hank wasn't actually in the room because he was meeting Cooper in the lobby.
Right.
But anyway,
But you are right that it does answer a major plot hole. How exactly does Hank nuke this place of his own volition? Does every super middle manager get a code for a nuke? Why don't they just nuke all the civilizations? Why was it just Shady Sands? I mean,
yeah.
we know why Hank did in that specific instance. He was spiteful of his wife for taking his kids, but you
yeah,
get my point. He tries to
yeah.
justify it in the end as the only way to get rid of or to beat factionalism is to destroy the factions,
Mm.
which is horribly stupid and contradictive of what is implied in the beginning of the show that he, did it to he has very strong, sentimental attachment to his daughter that, in that Raider scene, he chooses his daughter over the seven other people. It doesn't matter, they get to run away and live anyway, but then at the end he's just fucking I don't even know, another idiot in the show. And he's a super
Um.
middle manager idiot.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of idiotic middle managers. Let's be fair. Um. Anyway, moving on. I want to talk about Cooper Howard's family because you brought up the point of him like riding with his daughter on the horse at the beginning, and we kind of don't know what the status is. Seemingly, his wife and daughter are alive somewhere. Maybe in Vault 31. Who knows? And clearly at the opening scene at the of the show, it kind of seems like him and his wife have kind of split up, right?
Right.
We don't really.
The reveal of the whole conspiracy, we're kind of cutting back and forth between Walton Goggins, who is, like I said earlier, carrying that shitty scene by depicting what it looks like when a man goes through an existential
He's
crisis.
just absolutely the best part of the show.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, it kind of seems like in that opening scene, him and his wife have like had a falling out or have split up at some point. Because you'd think if they hadn't, that he would absolutely have a place in the vault, and he wouldn't be kind of in this disgraced state where this accomplished actor needs to appear at child's birthday party in order to get by, you know?
Yeah, they say he's paying alimony. Yeah.
Yeah, that too. Right. That is a line that one of them says. So it's very implied that, you know, they split up or something along those lines, and um at the end they seemingly are alive somewhere, and with her being a prominent executive at Vault-Tec, it would make sense that she would be in Vault 31. And if she isn't, then maybe she's like Robert House, somewhere else on the surface doing something. And he's been waiting all this time to find out where and how and
Or
all
if I'm
that.
being fair, maybe they were supposed to be somewhere and were taken and moved somewhere else,
Well, and that
which
play
is,
kind of
yeah.
kind of plays into another major question that I have that we don't get an answer to is Moldaver. She wasn't a Vault Tech employee. I mean, she was working on the Cold Fusion project, but she was adamantly against Vault Tech. How did she survive? How did she somehow get a place where she could cryogenically survive until present day?
I don't know, Delilah, do you have any answers? You've been pretty quiet.
More, I mean, the more you guys talk about it, the more I'm like, damn, the things I liked about this show are being picked apart.
I'll get to that. And look, I'm not trying to insult people who enjoy the show. In fact, there's a great analogy that I'll bring up at the end of all this. And you're not wrong, Delilah, for like enjoying this. Like on a surface level, like yeah, there's good production values, like it's some fun action, Fallout iconography. It's just like when you start peeling into the lower layers and thinking about it, yeah, I can see how you enjoy it at first. For me, I'm going
Remember,
into it looking to
I
pick
didn't
it
know it was
apart.
canon until today in this conversation, so that changed a lot for me. So I'm kind of like reprocessing everything again, especially like you're bringing in all this lore that either I forgot about because I haven't played Fallout since 4 when it released, and I only played a bit of Fallout 3. I never even finished it. So and now you're bringing all this in, and I'm like, damn, like I could definitely see it uh more critically now,
Well,
whereas I couldn't before.
Delilah, the thing you always have to keep in mind is that lore never changes.
Well, no, well, the lore does change a lot these days.
um, um, but anyway, yeah, the presentation of the show, I do think is like on a surface level, the show is very fun, and it's an enjoyable watch. It is when you start thinking about the writing. It is when you start thinking about, like I said, the story is the worst part of the show. It's like all the little things, like um just to bring up some like little fun things, is like Maximus running into the guy, like attacking the other guy, and he stops him from attacking him. He runs off, and he's like, he was fucking my chickens. Like, that's the
Oh my
kind of
god.
humor and the little like side quest, the little like NPC interaction you could almost view it as. That's kind of what made the show like more enjoyable, is like goofy shit like that. Um, the some of the stuff, you know, didn't resonate too well. We haven't talked about Vault 4 yet, which I feel was probably the slowest and most painful part of the show.
Yeah, you can take that out completely.
Even
Yeah.
Definitely fight that
even
one.
though Chris Parnell, you know, was always a joy to watch, even though I feel like he wasn't utilized the best
He's the
in this
one-eyed
show.
guy, right?
Yeah, the one guy.
From Anchorman. Why
Yeah,
did you do
I
that,
guess he is
Ron?
Anchorman.
You're my
He's
hero, Ron.
he's Dr. Spaceman in 30 Rock too. That's the bet Dr. Spaceman. I'm sorry, Dr. Spaceman in 30 Rock. Anyway, it's like stuff like that made the show much more enjoyable, because yeah, once you start really picking apart and thinking about the story, the main plot, as we've been doing, and as is kind of consistent with Bethesda Fallout games, like I said, it really, you really can find a lot of holes in it,
Yeah,
and can really pick it apart.
and it's worth mentioning, like a lot of people who are hardcore Fallout fans would actually not disagree. They would agree that yes, the humor is much more an element of Bethesda Fallout, because while there is levity, it's there to break up like really, dark and serious stories that permeate those West Coast Fallout games.
Yeah.
Like you're dealing with subjects of or topics of slavery, racism, xenophobia, all kinds of different stuff that is momentarily broken up by little points of levity. It's not as heavy-handed as it is here. That's more a Bethesda thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder if the show wasn't canon, if it would have just been better off. But
Yes.
at the same
Or
time,
or
I
being set
do
on the East Coast, yeah.
right. At the same time, I do think even within the show, after discussing it, there's still a lot of plot points that just didn't make very much sense or that needed to be, I guess, explained to connect the threads or fill the holes. But other than that, I just really enjoyed this show. I thought it was funny. I like that it wasn't trying to be well in my mind. I didn't think it was trying to be like any of the games, while also trying to be very video gamey, like with the the you can see when the dialogue choices are being made or when someone lacks charisma or when someone has like gunslinging abilities, you know.
Really, you know what this show should have
They
done?
should have had the signal in the top corner that says, like, failed, like,
Well,
and then the sound effect when you fail, it's like, "Dun," it's like
guys, I mean,
charisma check, thumb down, yeah.
we haven't even acknowledged that Amazon had a severe like missed opportunity with the show because they have that X-ray thing when you pause and it shows you a
Oh,
bunch of information on the pause screen. Man, they
Oh,
really could have.
The Pip-Boy and the
They
back,
really could
yeah.
have done something with that, man. They could have done like a what was that? That fucking spin-off of that one show that was like a choose your own adventure. It was Black Mirror, Bandersnatch, I think. That was like the choose your own
oh.
adventure like Netflix show. Man, they really could have done that with this and like made it so you pause the show and like pick stuff.
And look, if they wanted to do fourth wall break, or I don't know if you could consider that fourth wall meta elements like that, something experimental, I might be more forgiving. But like when you have somebody shoot an entire magazine and at people 10 feet away, or not 10 feet, like 10 yards away, and
Hey,
not
but
hit a single one, and it's
how is
like
that
you
not
hear people online, oh, that's how it is in the games.
I'm
I'm like,
about to say, how is that not an authentic Fallout
because this
experience?
isn't a game; it's a television show. You
Ah,
need to
come
maintain
on.
stakes.
I don't know. I like I said, I see it both ways, but if if it all comes down to intentions, right? If we find out that that was absolutely in the intention that they were trying to make it very video gamey, then I kind of really love that because what is that if not like really just creative and immersive in terms of how you're adapting a video game to a television show?
Again, like I just said in response to you, if they had actually made that explicit, I might be more forgiving,
Okay.
and it would have been funnier in that context than any of the jokes in the show. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Anyway, we kind of got off track talking about Moldaver, but I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to
Moldaver,
hypothesize about how she survived.
like most things, when you find out who she is, it makes it worse than it was at the beginning. Like apparently she was a scientist, got bought out. Her cold fusion technology didn't apparently she had no capability to replicate this because it all got bought out, and yet she's able to sustain the technology, able to get it working in the wasteland. She apparently somehow rises up to become some form of leader in the NCR, or at least what's left of it. She's apparently a cult leader. She's the woman of flame. We don't ever find out what
Not
that
necessarily a leader, but she is like she's
is.
not
Worship.
necessarily she's worshipped, but that doesn't necessarily mean she leads Vault 4 or something. You
Yeah.
know, they might just worship her unconditionally.
She says at the beginning in the first episode, like Hank's like, you should know, or I think I know you are, and she's like, everybody knows who I am, and like the shop lady in the second episode, she hears Mulder and she's like, oh my god, we never get an explanation for any of that. No explanation how she survived the apocalypse to begin with. No explanation as to why she's the same age. No explanation as to why she
Well,
seems to have some sort of, I don't know if it's implied to be like a love relationship or just friends. I don't know what it is with Hank's wife, ex-wife, and yet is willing to harm. Like it's unclear if she's using the corpse or the still alive, ghoul rotted corpse of Hank's ex-wife to manipulate Lucy, or if she actually cares about the lady. But if she cares about her, why is she letting her live in this sad state? So is she
so
manipulating Lucy? And her ultimate aim, somehow she rebuilt all of the infrastructure and the power grid of Los Angeles to be powered up by cold fusion and is fighting off the Brotherhood, who why are the brother? Well, we know why, because the Brotherhood wants the cold fusion. But by the
Um,
end of it, it's just what is Moldaver? She, and also just things like why didn't she pick up the Enclave scientists herself on the way back from attacking the vault? We know from the show geographically it's on the way. Why did she pay one guy to pay another guy to pay the shop lady to smuggle this guy back? Uh, Again, the whole woman lady of fire, what is that about? It's apparently NCR survivors. Why we don't really know anything. She's just there to facilitate plot points to create
I
a plot. I don't know.
I gotta imagine like she's gonna play a bigger, even though she's dead. I have to imagine that they're still gonna have her to kind of contextualize and explain like because the reason she didn't age, it has to be the cryostasis. It's just a matter of how did she get a place in a vault to get cryogenically frozen and come back in present day when she was so adamantly against vault tech. She was working on cold fusion. How did Benjamin Linus, going along with your lines of just not knowing what the character's name is here, but he was in Lost, so I'm going with that name. Um, how does he pick up the cold fusion project and start working on that in her place? And how does he, I guess, um, there clearly has to be a communication line between the two of them. So how did that occur? And there's a lot of questions surrounding this character.
Yeah,
She's intentionally left very mysterious, and I have to imagine that more of that's going to be explored in the second season. But it doesn't help that there's so many dangling threads at the end of this season that don't
they're
really
just
get
they just
explained.
they stop becoming dangling threads and just become plot holes because you still need them to make this season work. Like I understand what you're saying that they clearly are leaving a lot of stuff to be explained in season two, but that doesn't excuse the basic logic of season one not flowing.
I wouldn't say that they're plot holes because I'm not gonna view the season individually as like it needs to be this completely self-contained thing, because how many shows leave dangling threads until the next season or two seasons away to further expound upon. I'm not I would say it would be an issue if the show wasn't renewed and that was the ending we got, because then nothing would be ever be explained and we would be left with those conclusions. We're not, as far as we know. We could be, but we're not currently, because we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what season two
Mm.
will show us. So I have to imagine her kind of role in all this will be explained a little further to kind of contextualize all the things that I just questioned and the realities that we don't really know about her.
I just want to know what Delilah's thoughts on Moldaver were.
Okay, so she was just the person who you were believed to be was the villain and is actually not. So I guess on a surface level, that's who she is. But in terms of like the cult stuff, I interpreted it. They didn't explain this as that specific vault. I forgot the number. They accepted anyone and everyone from the surface, which is why they had such a big community. And so perhaps these people had a knowledge of who she was on the surface, but because they were experimented on and given this like very comfortable vault life, they kind of forgot exactly who she is and what role she plays and created this like weird cult around this ethereal person who they have a vague memory of. Or maybe that was like the vault's way of having them like I guess come to terms with them knowing who she is, because she's clearly known all over the surface. She's like someone that everyone knows for some reason. You say her name, it's like Voldemort, you know.
I mean, I guess part of the reason for that,
I give Voldemort a lot more IQ points than Moldaver.
I guess part of the reason that Vault 4 might be so familiar with her is because they do allow surface dwellers down into the
Yeah.
vault. So like that spread of information could occur that way. Maybe she's even been down there, who knows? We really just don't know. I still maintain that like she doesn't necessarily have to do anything for them to just worship her. Um like it's not like she leads them or anything. We've seen worship and cult things like that before where someone doesn't necessarily ask to be worshipped. People just do. And so that's kind of my stance on that. But we still don't know enough information necessarily to draw any concrete
Right.
conclusions.
And even
Yeah.
with that speculation, you have to ask, why is it that she's willing to just massacre Vault 33 and potentially massacre the guy that she needs to secure alive? And meanwhile, she wants to institute a policy in Vault 4 after she goes there that people can just come there freely and be saved. Like, there's just so many contradictions to the actions of the character that
Well,
stops being a character and is just a caricature that doesn't
I,
even work as a bad guy that you thought was the bad guy but is a good guy. She's very
I
clearly acting like a bad guy the entire time.
to that example though, she does have a predisposed um kind of grudge against Vault 31 32 and 33 in the sense that they're all Vault Tech executives
Which begs the question, why isn't she trying to get into Vault 31? Apparently her Pip-Boy lets her get into Vault 32 even though it's from 33. So do the Pip-Boys let you go into any vault? So if
I
that's
think
the
with
case,
those 3 vaults, yes, they do.
but if Bonzo is able to just get his way into 31, how is she, the super scientist that invents cold fusion, unable to get 31, which is only protected by a brain bot and is played for really bad jokes? So what's to stop her from just going in there and massacring all the super middle managers in the crowd? Just everybody's an idiot. That's it's the only way you can
Well,
explain
I
this
don't know
show.
that she necessarily wants to go in and murder everybody. She just wants
She should, because she apparently was in some sort of positional leadership in the NCR. She knows that any of these super middle managers somehow has access to nukes. So why wouldn't you want to take them out to prevent them from nuking your new cold fusion powered paradise?
well, because she needed Hank in order to activate cold fusion.
Yeah, but you take out all the other ones because we know that eye patch pregnant lady is from Fault 31, and I don't know, the new overseer lady
I
who
hear they
talks
have
about
really
boys
good mashed
getting angry
potatoes
and
there.
pissing on the walls, which is really weird. That's not a saying.
Yeah.
But anyway, there are other people from Vault 31 there who presumably would have access to nuclear weapons. I don't know.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you.
yeah. I don't think the writers could either yet. Probably writing that into season 2.
Hopefully they will in a way that makes sense.
Um. All right. I mean, I feel like we've.
Let's just talk about, because we talked about Maximus. We talked a little bit about the Ghoul / Cooper, who I think we can all agree was the most fleshed out and interesting of the
I feel like
characters.
we haven't talked enough about Cooper Howard because we keep talking about how he's the best part of the show. But we haven't really talked about why. Besides the fact that
The why is that it's Walton Goggins, but it's also a
yeah,
little bit because he's more fleshed out. Yeah.
I mean, I think of the 3 narratives that they're telling, or the 3 character narratives that they're telling, the fact that they split his story into 2 parts, right? The past and the present. I think that is very well handled. In how they dole out the like kind of slow burn toward the reveals of, oh, these people existed in the past just like he did, but he obviously didn't make it into a vault, and kind of maybe putting the pieces together as to why. I think that was probably, it was the most captivating part of the show. Definitely the most captivating part of the main plot. Even though it kind of led to an iffy conclusion. Um, but I did find the kind of the pacing of that to be the best part of the pacing of this show. Just seeing those interstitched past scenes of him kind of getting more involved and kind of finding out what his wife is really up to, or what Voltec is really up to. I thought it was really interesting. And then obviously his present day persona as the Ghoul, he's it again goes back to that theme that I kept bringing up. His change, his shattered optimism happened in the past, and he's kind of maybe trying to reclaim it, or really just trying to seek out his end goal of finding his family again. I
Yeah,
just think he's a really enticing character.
yeah, and it's physically symbolic. And if I had to pick one scene that I actually think was very good from this show, it's when he sits down in the supermart and watches the old tape of himself in the
Mm.
Yeah.
Western. By far and away, between the acting, the lack of the lack of dialogue to give the writers a chance to ruin it, and just the emoting of Walton Goggins between, the old version of himself and the new one sitting there. I'm presuming, Delilah, you concur with a lot of this.
Well, I just feel like he's the only character who, um, well, him and Lucy, they're the only characters who I feel like their stories made sense and why they lived the life that they live. Like kind of their motivations made a lot of sense. Like especially with Cooper, you know, like you guys said, you got to see his past and how he came to be who he is today. And I feel like they're having the most realistic reactions to what's happening in the vaults versus what's happening on the surface.
And they know how sex works, yes.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
No, I 100% agree with what you just said. I mean, I have issues with Lucy, and I guess we'll get to that. But I think we agree that, well, or I keep wanting to just say Walton Goggins.
Walton
The
Goggins, yeah.
ghoul slash Cooper was the most consistent and fleshed out, and through the acting, the most interesting character to follow. And I agree with you, Mark, that thematic representation of him, being a true believer, a soldier who fought in the Battle of Anchorage, um, and then a cowboy movie star who doesn't want to shoot the villain. And then we watch in the past flashbacks him slowly have to sell himself out into corporatism. And he tries to, but becomes cynical of everything he ever believed in. Before, and that's all before even the great revelation he finds about his wife, or
Yeah.
the nuclear fallout. So that, yeah, like honestly, all those flashbacks could have been their own interesting television show about a man, like being confronted with reality versus his preconceptions and what he thought he believed in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about Lucy then. I mean, we talked about Maximus. We talked about Cooper.
All right.
What?
So I guess first of all, I love that this actress has these big eyes because it like kind of spoke to the naivety of that character. Kind of like the innocence having big eyes, like kind of like childlike, but also character creation, right? You can go scale real big on the eyes. And I was like, oh, this is
See the
perfect.
contextualization of gameplay.
Yeah, and I guess that's what caught me most about the show overall. Like, it is that contextualization of gameplay. Like, you can see that Lucy. Yeah, maybe they showed her stats in the beginning of episode 1. You know, she was training or whatever. But
Yeah.
you can see like she was high in charisma. She was able to talk her way through vault stuff, through surface stuff, and I just think that was a really cool depiction of, you know, a girl who was a vault dweller and then came to the surface to try and save her dad. And
Which is
I don't know.
classic Bethesda plot.
Exactly.
I don't know if you guys have seen that meme of Fallout 3 for the show and then New Vegas. So it's just, I'm going in Fallout 3 in one corner. I'm going to find my dad. Fallout 4. I'm going to find my son. Or the TV show. I'm going to find my dad too. And then New Vegas. I got shot in the head, brought back to life, and I'm going to kill the motherfucker. So it's such a great meme that perfectly captures like the divide in the fan base. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing as you were talking about, kind of her introduction to Lila, something that kind of just dawned on me, because we were talking about genes and how the whole goal of this experiment is to breed more like the middle managers with perfect genetics and whatnot. It is kind of interesting, the dichotomy between her and her introduction and all these things that she's good at, all these perks, so to speak, that she is predisposed toward, and her brother Norm, who is this short dorky guy that doesn't excel at anything he does. It's brother, you have the recessive genes.
And he's the only person who is not, well, he acts idiotic sometimes, but for the most part, he's not an idiot.
Yeah.
He somehow clearly sees through all the bullshit that everybody should be seeing
put
through.
he put all of his skill points into intelligence.
There you
Lucy has all hers in charisma and I guess agility and endurance and you know, maybe a little bit of strength. I don't know.
Oh yeah, definitely. She held down like a bunch of dudes at
Yeah.
certain points of the show.
Sometimes unrealistically so, but yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that dichotomy there, especially I feel like that does kind of make it a little better, make it a little more sense. The fact that her, the just the difference between her and her brother is so stark. Um,
I think
I
that's kind of intentional on the
oh
writer's
no,
part
it
because they
obviously is. I'm just
want to create an
appreciating
arc
it.
for the brother
Yeah,
because he it starts off with him like, I'm not coming with you because I'm a
I'm
coward, and then he
I'm
runs
trying to
for you.
play. I'm trying to pay the show a little bit of a compliment here, Jason.
No,
Just
so was I. Like
work with me. Okay, cool, cool.
I was concurring.
Good, good. I like it. I like it. Um, cool. Anyway, Lucy. Um, yeah. By the way, if you guys, I don't know if you've seen the first season of Yellow Jackets. Ella Parnell was also in that, and she was excellent in it. I do highly recommend Yellow Jackets. At least the first season. The second season was also good, but not as
That's what
good.
I hear. I hear this is the first time I'm seeing this actress.
Hmm.
Um, I hear that she's fantastic, but over the course of the show, there seems to be, I don't think it's her fault. I think it's the directing. Very uneven performances between episodes. One episode she'll be fantastic, and another the direction will be way off. And it's not just her, it's also the guy playing Maximus. It seems like Walton Goggins just didn't give a shit what the director told him and actually played it as the scene should have been played. I would not be
Um,
that's the conversation that happened on set, but
I kind of feel like, as far as like pacing goes, like it almost feels rushed in the latter half of the show with in terms of like her progression and a bit of Maximus's too. But definitely hers. She's not really given much of a chance to um come around and realize that she's really got to toughen up in the wasteland. It kind of just happens with
she
a
yeah,
on a whim.
they heavily like imply I mean, they don't imply, you don't even have to imply, like from the beginning she's very bubbly and very obviously
Yeah,
idealistic.
I wouldn't say it's implied. I'd say like
It's not
that's
implied,
the
like
point, you know.
yeah, that's the point. So her arc is obviously going to be, and had the show just been her and Walton Goggins, it would have been perfect because the two characters play foil to each other. They're literally moving in opposite directions, or not opposite directions. They are at opposite, ends of the spectrum. But the problem is that they want to keep the character bubbly like that, even as she's clearly going through an arc and becoming more hardened. So you do get, I think it's episode 4, you get the part where she gives the medicine. We're not even going to get the details of the logistics of how ghoul medicine works, but which is not canonical to the games. But she gives the medicine to Cooper and says, I might look like you one day, but I'll never be you, which obviously is supposed to be the point of her turn. But at the same time, they want to keep that bubbly character, even though it kind of doesn't jive with where her character's arc is going. So I understand what you're saying, where like suddenly in the final episode, in the final confrontation, she suddenly it just happens.
Yeah. Also, real missed opportunity to give her some sort of weird perk when she got a finger reattached to her hand. You know,
Like,
like how if you complete a side quest, and there's like a side quest in Fallout 3 where like if you complete it, you wind up getting like a third arm or something that
yeah,
gives you like
yeah.
this weird like perk. Again, they really needed to like
And
they should have gone all in on the gameplay features of the show.
the robot decides it's going to do that right before it harvests her organs. So
Yeah. But to be fair,
yeah, it makes sense.
that robot was voiced by Matt Berry, and Matt Berry is always a treasure, so we can't really be mad at the robot for doing that.
Yeah, I
It's
guess.
not allowed. It's not allowed. Go watch What We Do in the Shadows and tell me you're gonna criticize Matt Berry for anything.
Yeah, I guess like I don't have a problem with Lucy in concept, nor do I have any particular problem with the actress. I think she did like the parts where she was allowed to. She did a great job. It was just certain parts, particularly pain reactions, like reactions
Mm.
where like you should have people screaming in agony. This is not just her. This is also Max. A bunch of characters in the show. They just don't make any noise and seem to have no reaction to suffering terrible wounds. It's super weird. And this goes all the way back to the first episode where she was just stabbed in the liver and is just kind of like like I don't know what the words to describe it. It's like a blank stare. She's just
Dude,
wandering through
it was
a
probably all.
battle in the vault.
It's
And
probably
oh, sorry, go
it's
ahead.
no. I'm sorry. I just want to say it's probably off screen that she chugs like 10 Nuka Colas to regain her health, and she's totally fine.
Well, she does take the stim pack on screen, so that's where they establish, the stim pack's
Yeah.
healing. But it's not. It's about her reaction to get it. Even when she gets stabbed and she's in the middle of the fight with the guy, there's like no reaction to her being stabbed.
Hmm.
And then that can get into a whole annoying thing where every action sequence in the show is slow mo with old timey music playing from that is used in previous Fallout games, which you can do it once. You don't do it every fucking action sequence. It just gets tired and annoying.
I will say I was kind of surprised that it took like 5 or 6 episodes to finally hear the Fallout theme and the soundtrack.
And
Um,
it's not even it's not even the
no,
right Fallout
it
theme.
was the Fallout
No,
theme.
no, it was the Fallout 3 / Fallout 4 theme. They should have
Well,
because it's she's looking at the history of the NCR. It should have been the New Vegas Fallout theme, but or Fallout 1 or 2 theme, but whatever. That's
oh
a nitpick.
well.
I'll
It
admit that's
was
a
it
nitpick.
wasn't Enon Zur that did the score for this show. I'll also add. So they had a different composer.
I like the music a lot.
I thought it was okay. I mean, the old timey tunes are always a joy to hear. But yeah, like we didn't have to hear "I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire" by the Ink Spots when that's like so heavily tied to Fallout 3. Putting it here doesn't really make a ton of sense, or it's I guess just to play into our expectations of Fallout, like 50s oldies music and stuff like that.
A lot of the
Yeah.
songs were used in prior games, and
Yeah, that's
it's
what I'm
attempt
getting
at
at,
follow yeah,
right?
it's attempt at fan service and
Like there's such a large back catalog of oldies tunes that you could have picked that weren't used in previous games.
I mean,
Um,
the only reason I brought it up was to say that almost every single big action sequence is done in this slow mo with the old timey music, and it just do a. It even makes like some of the bad choreography even worse because you more noticeable. But all of this is to say that I like Lucy on paper, and I like the idea of Lucy. I don't like how they executed it. I think it would have been better to just take Maximus out of the equation and have her with Walton Goggins for the whole episode or the whole series. They play off each other so much better,
I mean, I
and
think
you don't get exploding cock comments.
I don't I think Maximus does have an important part of the story. I just think uh uh, he's not given
He's there to give the Brotherhood a reason to be there for the cold fusion.
I would yeah, oh,
That's why
maybe
he's there because
sure.
they want Brotherhood there to have the iconography. Even
And the
though at this point in time, the Brotherhood in that part of the wasteland is for all intents and purposes destroyed.
the bigger issue is that he's just not really given any like he's not given any meaningful room to grow. Um
Right.
and I feel like yeah, we've already harped on this. He is the worst character. He definitely there's definitely issues there, and he's the one that could use the most work in terms of I guess fixing his plot.
Yeah. When your
But
character's dialogue is about comparing your penis to a pimple, there's issues with your writing.
It was shock value.
yeah, that was very weird. Very weird conversation. Anyway, um, yeah, I don't have much more to talk about. I mean, Jason, are there any more lore bombs you want to drop on us that this show fucked up or
I mean, I could like
anything?
I briefly. There's so much. Like I said, you can make a 3 hour video. There are 3 hour videos out there that go through not just lore, but also just the show and each individual thing. I mentioned the Enclave. That means nothing to anybody who hasn't played the games.
Yeah.
The same with the Brotherhood of Steel, really. Like they don't really. Like I said, they have a throwaway line.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's that is yeah, I guess that's something that we could talk about is not so much the lore and more so how this game, more so how the show um doesn't do enough to kind of explain like certain things. Like you said, the Brotherhood, like there is a throwaway line I think that does like or where Maximus explains what the Brotherhood is kind of all about. But there's just other like things out in the world that they kind of hint toward, but they don't really explain. And again, gamers are not the target audience or the sole
Right.
audience for this show. For non-gamers that have never played a Fallout game and know nothing about Fallout, but have an Amazon Prime account, because who doesn't? They're tuning into the show and they have no idea what a ghoul is, I mean, they don't even really go into super mutants. There's a Deathclaw skull at the end of
I don't
the
think there
show,
are any
but
super mutants in this.
I think there's a dead one like on a gurney at some point.
Maybe.
I forget what
Yeah.
scene that
I
was,
mean,
but
there shouldn't be, because again, we won't get into the lore reasons behind it. But the whole first game is about, because the super mutants were created by the Master, who the Master's base of operations geographically. Because when we see Lucy come out of 33, I'm not mistaken. I don't believe I'm mistaken. That's the Santa Monica Pier. So geographically, the Master's base of operations in Fallout One would be like a 5 or 10 minute walk from Vault 33. And the Master's whole thing was going into vaults and settlements and taking people to turn them into super mutants,
yeah.
which would have meant that Vault 33 would have been one of the first vaults to get taken over by the Master. So I guess the Master is not a thing, and the creation of super mutants, I don't know. Again, like, this is just super, like, apparently Todd Howard looked over it and it was all okay, thumbs up.
Was there a conversation when they were all the executives were at the round table talking about the different vaults that they were going to create? Wasn't there one that said there was one with super mutants? Like that's how they were experimenting on humans. I vaguely
They
remember something like that.
they did mention like what if we had like a vault that did this and stuff like
Yeah.
I don't remember one explicitly about super
There
mutants, but
so
definitely
super
doing some like
mutants,
fucked up experiments and
yeah, so
shit. Yeah.
super
Yeah.
mutants don't breed on their own. They're created with, like, I forgot the virus. It's like a virus or some sort of toxin or something that is only available in the one vault that ultimately, I forget the exact specifics of it, but it becomes controlled by the Master, and that's kind of he's kind of the main big bad, him and super mutants. And the
Yeah.
Brotherhood, the only reason the Brotherhood come out of their, their bunkers is to fight the super mutants, despite the fact that they have all this tech that could help the Wastelanders. And that's kind of like one of the big conflict of the first game. Um, anyway, that's just, you mentioned minor thing. There are a bunch of minor to major things that just invalidate other game canon slash lore that they clearly didn't think about with this show. But
Jason's about to be
waste too
like
much time.
if you zoom in on the box of sugar bombs in episode 2, you'll see that the nutrition facts say that they're 40 calories per serving when actually they're 50 calories per serving canonically.
Hey,
Well, good thing for Bethesda is that this show was popular enough to get people who've never played a Fallout game to play Fallout, and
True.
it reinvigorated the series for many newcomers, and for even Fallout 76, which was a failure when it released,
Yeah.
and slowly became better and better over time, and now is probably more popular than ever. So,
it's the only Fallout I haven't played.
yeah, well, not the only one I haven't played, but I I bought the collector's edition. Remember the bag? And
You
but
bought that
I canceled it before because I played the
Okay.
beta and I was like, this sucks, and so I canceled it before it happened.
Okay.
Thank God. Um,
Yeah.
but yes, it was bad at the time it released, and this is probably gonna motivate Bethesda to work on a new Fallout game. Although they still have like Skyrim cooking, so probably not for a very, very long time.
I love how
I
it's
love that
not
you said
even Elder
Skyrim.
Scroll. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not Elder Scroll 6. It's just
Sorry,
Skyrim.
Elder Scrolls 6,
No,
sorry.
no, but you're probably right. They're probably working on yet another port of Skyrim. Let's be
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah, exactly, the 50th port of Skyrim. And yeah, so and I watched this alongside my partner who's never played a Fallout game. Actually didn't like Fallout period when he first played it, and
Oh, okay.
watching the show actually got him to get back into Fallout 3, and he started to appreciate it a little bit more. And me as someone who's played, I platinum Fallout 4, and I enjoyed the parts of Fallout 3 that I played, and I'm motivated to kind of go back and revisit those so I can be a lore a lore fiend like Jason and actually pick this show
I'm not even
apart
a
with.
lore fiend. I'm an amateur when it comes to the lore, which is the worst
Fallout
part.
is like one of those franchises where the fans that are into it are really fucking into it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
But I still enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was a lot of fun. I did think it was funny for the most part, and I do like how it didn't take itself serious and that it was a completely unique story. Although now that I know it's canon, it kind of changes things a little bit for me. But overall, I just really enjoyed the show, and I actually appreciated this more than I did The Last of Us because
Fair
The
enough.
Last of Us was very one-to-one for the
Yeah.
most part, whereas this show, was just a new creative experience, and I think it worked well for what it did despite all the plot holes and things like that. I like the side quests of the show, and that's where the game shine, and that's where the show shined. So I had
I
fun.
I find what you said just interesting, going off of what Mark said, where it was a lot of problems stem from it, the target audience not being people familiar with the games. And from what Delilah just said, I feel very similar to this show the way I did the recent movies, tying in because the OG Paul Atreides, Hank. I forgot that I was supposed to call him Paul Atreides the entire time. I called him Hank, but all I could see was David Lynch Dune. But I felt very similar to this show as I did the recent Dune movies by Villeneuve. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Good lord.
Where it's those Dune movies were very clearly made for people not familiar with the books, but if you know the books, it actually makes them a whole lot worse. It's the same with this show where they tried to put in all this stuff for people who played the games and know the games, but if you do know that stuff, it makes it a whole lot worse.
I mean, that's interesting because I actually couldn't stand the Dune movie, and I thought it was because I didn't read the book.
That's
No,
funny.
I honestly just I never thought I would say this, but David Lynch Dune is a better adaptation of the book.
On the topic of Kyle MacLachlan and David Lynch. It was very funny to me. Kyle MacLachlan, for those who don't know, plays Special Agent Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks,
Oh,
which is a show that I love. So the fact that there was a different character named Cooper kept throwing me off because usually every time I see Kyle MacLachlan, I just
Think
think in my
Cooper, yeah.
head, it's Coop, it's Cooper.
Same
That's just
way they kept saying McLean because that's their Lucy and Hank's last name. And I kept thinking
what were you
John
thinking, John
McClane,
McClane?
and then it's spelled differently when it shows
Yeah.
up, and I didn't recognize it as McLean.
Yeah, I found it really funny that like it's spelled similar to Kyle MacLachlan's last name is spelled with the MAC for the Mac part. I wonder
Right.
if that was intentional. The other thing shit that I did want to bring up is the fact that the dog's name was indeed dog meat by the
Dog
end of the
meat, yeah.
season. Yeah. I was sitting there like at the edge of my seat waiting for someone to call the dog meat, and finally Walton Goggins, the man of the hour, uh pulled it out. So
they gave dog meat some lore in the show. I don't remember that in the games that I played.
it's always like a different dog, and this is definitely the one that I would say has like the most, yeah, like explanation for it,
Yeah.
that it was an experimental dog that Benjamin Linus trained in secret. And
That somehow it and an old man can run past a giant fucking automated machine, a minigun turret, and not get hit as they're just waddling through its line of fire.
he put all of his points into agility, man. I don't know what to tell you.
I know. I just had to mention it at some point because I was laughing. I was laughing at all the moments I wasn't supposed to laugh in this show.
Anyway,
Um,
do we have anything else we want to talk about before we wrap this episode up?
just going back because I mentioned something to Delilah how she like really enjoyed it, but no was when she finds out it's canon and starts thinking about it more, the kind of the facade peels away and you start seeing the issues. I have a feeling there are two comparisons to make both the same. Season one of The Mandalorian and season one of, not coincidentally, Westworld, which the team behind this, was behind Westworld.
Or at least Jonathan Nolan, yeah.
Yeah. Well, season one of Westworld was actually legitimately masterful. and then just fell off a fucking cliff in the second season.
Okay.
Which is part of the reason I stayed away from the show, because I knew the history of the team behind it. But I think the better comparison is Mandalorian, because Mandalorian season 1 was like okay, it was enjoyable. You could appreciate the Star Wars iconography, the return to form. Um,
And for you, I imagine
John
you really liked
Favreau,
the serialization of it.
and John Favreau talking about all the influences like Kira Kurosawa and
Yeah.
westerns and Lone Wolf and Young Cub and all that stuff. Like it was like there were problems with the writing, but you were willing to overlook it because you were enjoying it and having fun. And then season 2 of The Mandalorian came out, and the writing problems became more apparent to the broader audience, and people started noticing the issues. And then season 3 came out, and fucking nobody was really watching it
Well,
anymore.
hold
I
on, because
have a feeling.
you're missing an important half step in there, which is the Book of Boba Fett, which was awful and terrible, and is the reason season 3 of The Mandalorian was such a
Okay,
mess. But
regardless, the point is that in season 2, people, the allure washed off, and people started recognizing the issues,
oh, I
which were
know, yeah.
numerous. I have a feeling the same thing's going to happen with this show. There were a lot of people. I was surprised because I didn't pay attention to anything going on with this show when it came out. So I was surprised to see a lot of people who I tend to agree a lot with, and like big name, big YouTubers like Actman and whatnot, making sure like this is great. And I was like, I thought I was being gaslit. I was like, because I had just finished watching it, and then eventually I found, there's a lot more people picking it apart. The point I'm trying to make is I have a feeling like those more mainstream voices, when season 2 comes around, will probably be more critical, and they will follow that same path as The Mandalorian. The allure, the iconography, the kind of fun, enjoyable elements of just watching that world will wither away, and you're still going to be trying to figure out how all those threads you talked about actually connect logically.
Yeah, and like ultimate like I said, I had a good time watching the show too, and I do think overall like it was overall a good show, right? Or a good season of television. Despite all the issues, I had a good time. I had a good time rewatching it too. Um it really is I guess it's a little different too, because I did know that this was canon to the games, or I at least made that assumption and got that confirmation later. But like by the final episode, like all these questions that I brought up in this podcast, all the loose threads that I've talked about that I put in our notes, like I thought about those right away, and I'm like, well, fuck, we really got to wait for till the next season just to find out all this information that realistically they probably should have left us with a little more. Um, that's really what where I kind of left off with my issues with this show is just the way that the season concluded left a little too many questions for my taste.
That's fair.
But I don't know that I think the next season's going to be the straw to break the camel's back like you do, Jason. At least I don't want to believe that, because I'd like to be a little optimistic about it.
Well, the problem is that they tease New Vegas at the end, which it does much more than canonize, or not. I forget.
Kind of
I think it does.
bridge
I
the
think it
gap
just.
between two different locations or two different settings.
Well, the problem is a lot of the conflicting information is going to become much more apparent, because New Vegas is a location that way more people are going to be familiar with, even like just general gamers who might not be as knowledgeable about the past of Fallout, to put these weird things together that I am. Not weird things, canonical things that I am. But a lot of people have played New Vegas, so the inconsistencies and the gaps in logic will become much more apparent. That's a big
Yeah.
reason to say that.
I will say, like, this doesn't even have much to do with this show. This has just kind of been a looming thing on my mind. The more people talk about New Vegas, the more I recognize that I really need to play it, or give it a more. I've played it before, but not very much. I need to give it a serious shot.
Yeah.
Because I do understand that with the original team kind of being more involved and behind that game, that one's probably much more worth my time than
Again,
giving Fallout 4 another shot.
Yeah. No, definitely. New Vegas is the pinnacle, and again, as I mentioned earlier, they built that game essentially from what came out as codenamed Project Van Buren, which was all the material they were gathering in preparations to make the original Fallout 3 before it got sold off to Bethesda.
Mm.
Which is why it kind of has that through line with 1 and 2. Takes place, on the West Coast, this time in the Mojave Wasteland instead of California, but the NCR is kind of that point of continuation, yeah.
Hey, you keep saying that this show takes place only on the West Coast, but there is a town called Philly, so checkmate, Jason.
Well, I mentioned earlier that the Brotherhood keeps talking about the Commonwealth, which is Massachusetts, and
I know.
the Pridwind is in the end, so apparently the Pridwind can just fly across the entirety of the United States.
Yeah, they just take those helicopter things, man. It's no big deal. There's no
Yeah,
one in the airspace. They can just fly.
But as I said earlier, it's a fundamental misunderstanding. Fallout is the post-apocalypse. There are
I know.
nation states and powers that could shoot it down. Shooting it down is part of multiple endings in Fallout 4, which is what which canonizes one of 2 endings in Fallout 4, because the Pridwind has to survive.
I'm just messing with you. I just want to bring up that there's a town called Philly. That actually really confused the shit out of me when they just said that they were going to Philly. I was like,
it did
what?
me as
I thought
well.
this was in California. And then you see the sign and it's Philly, and you find out it's a repurposed landfill. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like the only way they can save the show if it's canon, if it has all these open-ended questions that they're gonna need to answer at some point, is if they somehow make the side quests of the show good, like, and have like really like impactful moments with those side characters, like they did. Not to spoil anything, but like I'm thinking of like Paladin Dance and Fallout 4.
Dance Revolution, baby.
I mean, I feel like
reveal.
Maybe what could have been a better approach is to not have this main narrative, but make it kind of like serialized and make it like these individual vignetted stories. Maybe different,
Yeah.
like have a different character focus on each episode. Something like a Twilight Zone type deal where it's like a different story in the wasteland.
I agree. If they had cut Maximus completely, or maybe just made him a character in one of these serialized episodes, and had it Lucy and Cooper, who serve as natural foils to one another. That's why it's episode 4, I think, right, where he's taking her to sell her to get ghoul medicine.
It's 4, yeah, 5, yeah. I think it's episode 4. If it's not 4, it's 5. It's like right in the middle of the show.
It was easily the best episode because it's mostly just them. Now it still has its issues, granted, but that's also the episode where we see what I talked about, the best scene in the show, which is him watching the videotape, but just the character interactions between Cooper and Lucy, because of the natural dynamic created there. If the show was just that serialized, could have been, I think, leagues better. Yeah.
I think the thing that this show needs is for Todd Howard to show up in his leather jacket and just be there. I think that will save the show.
He should have played a cameo when they were putting that grinder peg leg on the Enclave doctor, and he should have been the one holding it, and he should have said to the doctor, "Don't worry, it just works," before he shoves the fucking grinder on his leg.
As he's doing it, he just looks up and says, "Please buy Starfield." Available now on Xbox and PC. You might have to upgrade your PC. It is optimized for PC, but it's a newer PC game. All right. Are we good to wrap this up? Anything else you guys want to talk about?
I just want Delilah to say things, so it's not 80% of this just me babbling.
I mean, I feel like she and I both kind of gave our concluding statements about
yeah,
And
I want to reiterate, as I said already, that like I'm not trying to criticize people for liking the show. You can enjoy the show. There are things to enjoy. As I always say, I make no apologies for enjoying Michael Bay Transformers.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's true. You don't.
I know it's bad, but I enjoy it.
Fine. I know Advent Children is bad, but I made you guys watch it, and I enjoy it, and we had a good time talking about it. Go listen to that episode. All right, Jason, you don't want to give a Kwasnicki score on this, right?
Oh yes, I do. 3 stim packs out of 10.
Oh, 3 stim packs. Oh,
it really just survives on Walton Goggins and some of the production values, even if I think the production values are misutilized. But
okay.
No, I think even isolated from the Fallout universe, I think it's just a bad show on its own.
Okay. All right. Well, there we have it. Cool. Delilah, you got anything you want to plug?
An Elden Ring DLC on my YouTube channel. That's it. It's a
Oh
full
yeah.
playthrough.
Yeah, go watch Delilah's shorts of her getting really pissed off as she gets fucking annihilated in Elden Ring. It's hilarious.
Thank you.
Yeah, so go check out Delilah on YouTube. If you're watching us, listening to us on YouTube, thank you so much. Please like the episode, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment, tell us who your favorite character was and why it was Walton Goggins. And make sure to, share the show with anyone that you think will enjoy listening to us shit on things, apparently, because I don't know, man. We need to get some fucking positivity on the show.
We just had an episode about Stellar Blade, which we all love.
Yeah, and then like two episodes, the first two episodes before that were us like complaining about big open world RPGs. Like we need to have some positivity on this show. So yeah, share the show with anyone you think will enjoy it. What's that?
I liked the Fallout show.
Yeah, I did too. But even though
yes,
I did,
let's be real. It's really just me being negative.
Well, no, I don't. The thing is, I don't disagree with a lot of the things you're saying, so I can't really like argue against it.
Yeah, it's like
I was just like, oh yeah, actually, that's true.
You like, I always say that you can't love a thing without criticizing it too, and it's not that I think any of us loved this show, but we liked it, or at least Delilah and I liked it, but I'm still sitting there like asking all these questions at the end.
And you're
of the
allowed to
last
like
episode.
it.
No, I know I am. I know anyone is. Jason, and just so you know, you're allowed to like things too. It's okay.
Yeah, I love me some Dance Dance Revolution. Those are some old Fallout 4 memes, man. It's been so long. Do you guys remember those memes? Man,
no.
You don't remember
I
Dance
don't.
Dance Revolution?
I remember
the glitch paladin dance flipping out.
I remember the fucking dude that we talked about at the beginning of the show, and then I remember the Valentine ghoul guy that everyone had a massive crush on. And that's about it.
Wasn't he a robot?
Oh, I thought he was a ghoul.
No, he was a robot. That was the whole plot of that.
Oh,
of Fallout
maybe that's a spoiler. I didn't.
No, it's
I
not.
Didn't...
It's not, because he's very clearly a synthetic.
I thought he was a ghoul.
No,
I don't even know if I met him. I don't think I got very far in Fallout 4.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Like, I guess before we close out,
what if I told you that you never played any of the Fallouts? Actually,
I mean, I platinumed 3.
Have you ever had a dream, Mark, that seems so real?
I platinumed 3. I played the shit out of 3, and then 4. I don't know if I've ever told you guys this story. Fallout 4, I got maybe like 30 or 40 hours into, and at one point there was like this alleyway in between some buildings, and there were like a shit ton of super mutants and other bullshit, and I died going down there like 5 times, and it took me like 2 hours to finally kill everything and make my way down this alleyway. And I was on my way to like a quest. That's why I was trying to take that path, because it was just a direct path to the quest that I was headed. And I took, like I said, took me like an hour or 2 hours to get through all these enemies and actually get to the end. And I'm like, finally, thank God. And there's a cow carcass. And I go to loot the cow carcass.
Oh no.
And there was a mine hiding under the cow carcass.
Oh no.
And it blew me up and I died. And where was the last place that I was saved? Was all the way at the beginning of that fucking alleyway.
Crap.
Again. So I have not played Fallout 4 since that day. That was sometime in 2015 when that game came out. 2016? When did Fallout 4 come out?
2016, I believe, yes, or 2015 maybe.
2015. It was 2015. Yeah, so
and somehow I platinumed it.
Yeah, I honestly,
Mark the Trophy Hunter never even played it, and I platinumed it somehow.
What do you? I just said I spent like 30 or 40 hours playing it. Anyway, okay, back to wrapping up this show. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, thank you so much. Please rate and review the show. 5 stars preferred. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Don't waste your review bitching about Jason. He's not going anywhere. Even if he doesn't like the thing that you like, he's here to stay, guys. I'm sorry to say. We just love him too much. That honest pessimism.
It's also weird to hate someone that has a different opinion.
That's true. That is true. That is some slight weirdo behavior. So
Unless it's an
I will
opinion that sucks. Like
look,
humans.
feel
You know?
feel free to criticize me, but know that I take your criticism with love.
Oh,
As I love my friends who like this, even though I criticize it heavily, and they
look
love
at
me,
you.
even though I enjoy Michael Bay Transformers.
That's true. So yeah, make sure to share the show with anyone that you think will like it. Hey Jason, what's the next episode gonna be on?
The next episode will be Final Fantasy 16 DLCs. I don't remember the names.
Well, they're in the notes. I wrote them
Oh shit!
down.
Exodus to the Fallen and the Rising Tide.
Yeah. So yeah, next episode will be a DLC episode. We'll talk about the Final Fantasy 16 DLC. Delilah, the Final Fantasy break is over. I hope you're prepared. We're back on this train. We've waited too long to talk about more Final Fantasy, so stay tuned for that. And as always, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Good night, everybody, or a good day whenever you're listening.
Shit, we didn't even talk about Fred Armisen and his like fiddle radio station.
We didn't even talk really about Fallout 4 or Vault 4 except in passing.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter. All right,
No, it
goodbye,
doesn't.
everyone.